Hello again. We're beginning lecture 7. In this clip, I just want to give you a quick introduction of what's in the package for you to read. Essentially, the question that we're going to be dealing with in this session and in the upcoming one, lesson 8, is the importance of peace in the context of the Zionist vision. Now, I think it's important to see this in the broader context of statehood, first of all. So we know that the history of modern politics in many ways is a history of constructing new political structures. And what happens in Western European politics during the course of the 18th and 19th centuries is that the various different sovereign units form themselves into the context of nation states. And the nation states take the form gradually of becoming liberal states, progressive states, democratic states through the processes of emancipation and enlightenment. And we know that this notion of the nation state played a very, very fundamental role in the project of trying to achieve peace in Europe. So the state was defined, at least in theory, as having a significant role in the making of peace. And that was certainly essential to Kant's vision in his very famous essay from 1795, A Perpetual Peace, in which he argues for the role that statehood plays in peacemaking and the essential role that a confederation of states will play in creating peace between nations. So that's the first section there. If you go through it, you'll see there's also Hegel's critique of Kant and history's refutation of Kant, which is, of course, obvious. When you look at the history of modern states, you can see that the modern state has become, perhaps more than any other political unit in the history of the world, a very, very effective and powerful war machine. So the question of the modern state in today's world is really an important question. Where does the state go? Is the state moving in the direction of sustaining peace, or is it permanently in danger of having accumulated so much collective power that it can be a threat to peace? Now, within the context of the conversation about states, we have to ask ourselves, what's a Jewish state? State of Israel defines itself as a Jewish and democratic state. Now, that's really, really an interesting problem to deal with, and Israeli society is twisting its head around these two things because Judaism and democracy in the context of statehood are both adverbs that compete with each other. The notion is that the Jewish state is, to be honest, a Jewish regime. There is such a thing. Judaism, because it has a national and a religious dimension, it also has a natural form of political expression, which in previous sessions I've spoken about in context of its anti-political characteristic. But one way or another, it's not the same as democracy. So what is the Jewish state, and how does the Jewish state interface with its being a democratic state? So is it possible to talk about the Jewish state as having a different vision of peace from the vision of peace that the secular, Western, liberal, progressive state had? And that's the question that we deal with in the next section. What is the Jewish meaning of peace? And how does the Jewish meaning of peace integrate into the conversation about the idea of statehood and Jewish statehood? And we'll look at that there in the context of Rav Kook's teachings, but he is just an example, I think, of other thinkers who address the same question in other ways. And it's interesting to see how these ideas play out after the great shock of the two world wars, when we basically have to ask ourselves the question, if the state is not necessarily a mechanism for making peace, then does the Jewish state have something to offer the world that will allow us not only to look about how we make peace in the Middle East, or how we make peace even in the world as a whole, but how the vision of a Jewish state fulfills something of the messianic promise that was so central to the founding ethos of Zionism? So, go ahead and read.